The changes we will make to player properties are just going to be a couple here. Uh, Remember what we were looking at before was actually making sure that the player state Mario Dead was going to be created, so they would actually do the little, like when the Goomba hits him, he'll kind of fly into the air and then fall back down. Then the music will play for the life's over with, and then we want to make sure that we subtract from the HUD up to that point. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and set up our private variable up here at the top. Just like we did before, like we were using the collider, we actually had that, let's see where it is. In the collider attack box, we were doing the player property dead equals true. So let's go ahead and assign, let's go ahead and create a private variable for it here. So we'll say private variable dead, and this is just going to be a bool statement, which will be equal to false to start with. Alright. And then after that one, I want to do just a couple other ones here. So we'll scroll down to the bottom here. And then for the Mario Dead State, let's go ahead and just delete the destroy game object. So we don't need that one. What we want to do though is go ahead and just start filling in the options inside of here. So very similar to this, where we're taking control of gravity, we're translating the character up and down. We want to do the same thing for this state for the character. So for player state Mario Dead, let's go ahead and start off by actually doing the taking the player controls, and we're just going to take the gravity and set it to 0. That way we can kind of ensure ourselves of being able to control the character up and down with no issues. We're going to use this this object, so we could either do this dot or we could just say transform. Either way, since we've actually been using this up here, we'll just kind of stick with the same thing. So this transform dot translate, and what we want to do is move it up on the y-axis, so it'll be 0. And we'll say about a 3 times the time dot delta time. And with that, we'll be able to move our character up into the air, and a distance of 3. Once we move the character up into the air, let's go ahead and do one other thing, is that the character, if we were to move him back down, notice that he's still going to land directly on top of the collision boxes that we have down below here. We want to make sure the player actually lands in front of, so he just goes straight past these boxes. So over inside of here, let's go ahead and do this right here. We'll say that the player's new position, so the transform dot position dot z is actually just going to equal we'll just do a -1 on here. So once the player moves up, we'll move the player out. Then we're just going to hold it for just a second. We'll go ahead and just do a yield and wait for seconds on this. So this is going to allow it to go up into the air, and then it's going to hold for, what we could do is we'll just do about 0.4, 0.5 seconds, so just about a half second hold before we actually start to move the player, start to like assign gravity and move the player back down. This will make sure that he moves up smoothly for about a half second, or just a little bit less than. Alright, then we'll just take the player controls for gravity now, and we'll go ahead and turn gravity back on again. Remember what we were talking about before when it came to gravity is that we've been typing in a hard number here every time. You could easily add this as either a global variable or just a variable from within player properties or the player controls, and make the call to it from there. So again, we have our player controls gravity turning on, and then at that point, let's go ahead and wait for just one more second here. So we'll say wait for seconds. And for this part of it, we just want to go ahead and wait until the player completely moves off screen. So we'll give it about 2 seconds in case the player's higher up off the ground. So if the player was jumping, he got hit up somewhere up here, he would fall, and then once he's off screen, then we'll actually set it so that the player is either going to die or the change Mario state's going to stay false, and then it breaks out. So at this point, what we do have is we have the option right now. Let's see, where are we at? Right here. We have the option to wait for a second, and then let's go ahead and use our one check. So if he's dead, he's either completely dead or he's just subtracting a life. And we want to check for both of those options. The option for completely dead means that we want to load up a separate screen. So we'll go ahead, we'll do a separate function for that one, and for this one we'll just check to see if he's dead and he can actually have a life subtracted. Alright, so we'll say if and dead is true, then let's go ahead and put in the option just to subtract the life from it. So we'll say lives minus minus. And this will again allow us just to go ahead and subtract what our current lives are from player properties up at the top. We have lives right here, so we're just taking one from it. Whenever Mario state dead is called, and if the player state dead is actually true, which was what we're calling up from right here inside of this one, we're making this true, which is automatically going to make sure that the player life is subtracted from it. Alright. So if it is, and it's not set to 0, then we'll go ahead and move our player position back to the current save position. So we'll just say that this transform and position is going to equal our get component. So remember, our get component for this one is going to be the spawn save point. So we'll just say spawn save setup. I think it's going to be the file called here. Let's double check. And spawn save setup right there. Okay. So we're going to call up the spawn save setup, and our variable for that one was current save position. Alright. And then from there, we'll just say player state is just going to equal the player state small. So remember, again, when the player comes back in, we just want to make sure that he does come back in small. Okay. And then, since we're changing the state, we can actually, and we'll set this one to equal to true. Alright, so we've got a change state actually happening, so we set it to true and it changes. And then we will go ahead and turn off our toggle for this one, so currently it's set to true. We'll go ahead and make this equal to false. There we go. Alright, so we now have a check for this to subtract the lives from it. And then inside of here we have our character basically changing back to the original position. And at that point, again, you could probably do some, you want to test it out, make sure everything's working along the way. Afterwards, though, the next thing that we want to look at, we'll go ahead and add in the sound, the play sound function, and then we also need to add in one additional function, which would be the player lives function that we can stick inside the update. That way, no matter what's being called in any of the files, anytime a life's been taken, then the player lives will actually be registered during the update function. So, to get going with that part of it, let's go ahead and do a couple of things right here. Let's going over to our collider attack box, the one we had open from before, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy the play function, the play sound function right here. And we'll just use this one again. And again, this is one of those things, I'm copying and pasting that same code. Obviously, if we're going to use it this often, we could just make its own separate script, and it could be something you assign to each game object. That way you can just access it one time through one spot. Especially if we decided to change that one function and make it something else, it would be really nice to know that if I added additional elements inside of here, that I could actually have access to all my other times I've used it. But for right now, we're just kind of copying and pasting some code here. So with this one, let's go ahead and add a couple of parts. Just go ahead and go down here so you can see it. Okay. So we have our state. Everything so far for our state, the set player state is working for the function. What we need to do is actually get access to a sound file. So we'll just go ahead and make a variable down here. We'll move it up to the top here in a second. I'm going to do a sound die, and we'll just make this an audio clip. And then let's go ahead and put in two of our variables that we usually use for our sound file, which is just the private variable sound rate and sound delay. So I have the private variable sound delay as well. Alright. So with both of those, we could just copy and paste the play sound function here. Okay. So we'll be able to use this inside of our inside of our options. Let's go ahead and go down here. The next thing that we want to do, we're just trying to finish off this script right here for the player properties. The next function that we want to create is one called player lives. And player lives is basically just to allow us to, again, subtract lives from it. So what we're going to do is say that inside of player lives, it's going to check that if lives is equal to 0, there we go. So the conditional, if the lives is equal to 0, then we want to play the sound. So we have our play sound file, and the sound file name will be that sound die. And we'll do 0 for delay. We just want it to play automatically right up at start. And then once it plays, I'm actually going to make it just like the other one we did before. Is that we're going to do a wait for seconds, and we'll do this. The second amount will just be 3 seconds. Again, this could just be the link. You could find it by finding the link to the audio file in case your audio file is different. I'm setting it to just 3 because that's the link to the file we're using. And then we want to do one last thing here. Just like we've done before when it comes to a level load, we're just going to go down and do the load level from the application. And we'll make a new scene here in a second, and we'll call the new scene Mario 2D Mario Screen Lose. Alright, so if our lives get down to 0, so every time we're subtracting, whether through the kill box when he falls off the side, or if the player hits him enough where it becomes a subtraction from the final hit on that, either way, once it gets down to 0, we're just simply going to have a load level, and it loads up the lose screen. Now this could actually load up the main menu screen. It could load up any different kind of screen you want. If it wanted to be a video playing and showing an animation clip or something like that. For us though, by having this one, let's make sure that we actually go back into Unity here, and inside of the scenes folder in the projects tab, we need to make sure we actually have a scene for it. So let's go ahead and just push Control in, and we'll make a new scene here, and just push Control S to save the scene. Save it inside of your 2D Mario assets inside of scenes. And then we'll save the name. Again, the name was the, let's see, 2D Mario Screen Lose. There we go. And we'll save that one. Alright, so we should see it right here. And this scene, just so that we know we've actually made it into here, let's go ahead and just place in a quick GUI element. If you go up to Game Objects, you click on the Create Other. Inside of here, you should see one is the GUI texture. Let's see, we'll do the 3D text. And the 3D text, it just simply says the hello world to start with, but if you go to the inspector with it selected, go over to the text mesh component, and you can just change this one. We'll say Mario is no more. And do you notice how it's the anti-alias is kind of jaggedy and stuff? Easiest way to fix that one is to actually just go in with the object selected, just go to your font size right here. And for instance, I'll take my font size up to about 30. Let's see, we could even take it maybe up to about 50. The larger you take the font size, if you go in, and then from there, use your scale tool, and actually just scale it down. And notice how much more crisp and sharp everything gets with it now. So, kind of a quick, simple change with it, but this will at least give us our text to let us know that we've actually made it to the next level. So we'll go ahead and save this one out. And go ahead and go back to the tutorial. I believe it was 23. Alright. So at this point, this means that when the player's lives get to 0, the application load level will load that scene that we just made over there. After the 3 seconds played, which allows us to have the play sound from there, it just ensures that we'll have that time frame that we need for it. Alright. So, the only thing left is the play sounds. The player lives, this one actually needs to be placed up into the update function, because currently it's only a function and it's not actually being updated or called on. So let's go ahead and go up to the top here. And let's find inside of our update, it looks like we just need to, so let's jump up there real quick. And inside of update, let's just place it right below the player controls. And we'll just say player lives, open, close, and semicolon. Okay. So this, again, this is just going to be the update for the lives, just to check to see whether or not it's actually at 0 yet. So to do a quick check to make sure everything's going to work for us, let's go ahead and double check on this one. I think we need to do, let's double check, I think we need to do a sound file. Part of our player lives was calling that sound die, so let's make sure we have that one on the box. So inside here for the collision box body, see, actually this is player properties, so it'll be on player. Alright. So for the player properties, we do have the sound die right there. Let's make sure we actually add a sound to it. And this will be the same sound that we've already added once to the other one. So we'll do the Mario death right there, and just drag it into this one. So when the player falls and dies this way, so again, this is a different way he's actually dying. Instead of the kill box, he's getting hit by this player. And we just want to be sure that it actually plays out that way. Alright, let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit here. Okay, so this should actually all work. We'll go ahead and take the sound die as well. We'll move this one. Actually, let's go ahead and move both of these all up to the top. There we go. So up at the top, let's place in our last set of variables here. And we'll save this out. Make sure to have everything set up right for the spacing. And then when you go back into Unity, just be sure that when the sound file updates for its position, that it still maintains the right spot for it. Okay, so it's still at the same spot, hadn't lost anything. Okay, so with this, we've got all of our properties set up. We have the live set up in place. If I was to go in here and play it, let's see, we're going to have the enemy hit us once. So he gets hit, he plays his sound. He gets hit again, he dies. Then he respawns after the thing. And he did respawn right where the player was, so it went straight to the death state since he was already small. If you want, you could actually add in a secondary check for it. That way he doesn't spawn unless the player actually isn't there. Or we could even give him like a 1 or 2 second invincible mode before he actually gets hit. And then we can also... Oops, I didn't jump far enough up there, so we got hit by him. Alright. So here we'll jump on his head. Oh, and when we did, we jumped off. So we got 1 life left. If I fall off, the same thing will happen. So once hit by the player, we went to the next state. If we jump off, same thing happens. It goes to 0 and takes you to the next level. Alright, so both of those ways work for us, which is good. This will finish off the Goomba attacking for the player, and the player being able to shrink from the different states depending on what state he's currently at. Alright, so let's make sure that you see on the code side. Let me just increase this here. So last part again, player properties. We only changed a couple of things. We added a few variables, and we added a function inside the update. And then inside of our changing our player states, we had the Mario dead state, which we increased in code size, just pushing the player upwards and moving him in front of the current collision boxes and then dropping him down. Alright, and then we added the player function down at the bottom here.